Before World War I, finance was still romantic. Bankers wore top hats, currencies were backed by gold, and the global economy, though imperfect, was remarkably stable. London was the financial capital of the world, and money moved between empires like clockwork. But 1914 shattered the illusion. When the guns of August roared, every major European power realized something terrifying: this war would not be short, and it would not be cheap. Gold reserves were nowhere near enough. So governments suspended convertibility, issued war bonds, and flooded their economies with paper money. Central banks, once cautious guardians of stability, became engines of state survival. The public was told to do their part, buy bonds, accept rationing, and trust that peace would bring prosperity back. But it didn't. After 4 years of total war, Europe was broken, not just physically, but financially. Currencies had lost their anchors. Inflation was rampant. And faith in old economic rules had vanished. This was the death of financial innocence. From this point forward, money was no longer just a store of value, it became a political weapon, a tool of survival. And the world would never trust it the same way again. If World War I shattered the gold standard, World War II buried it. By 1939, the world had already tasted depression, hyperinflation, and failed economic recovery. Now, it faced global war again, but this time, governments knew the drill: print, borrow, and control. The United States financed the war through massive bond campaigns, enlisting not just soldiers, but savers. Buy war bonds wasn't just a slogan, it was financial mobilization. Americans lent the government billions, believing it would defeat fascism and rebuild the world. In Europe, nations printed without restraint. Currencies collapsed. Rationing became normal. Central banks became command centers. War wasn't just fought with tanks and guns, it was fought with spreadsheets. But the real financial revolution came at the war's end. In 1944, as the Allies closed in on victory, 44 nations met in a small town called Bretton Woods. There, they designed a new global order. The US dollar would become the world's reserve currency, backed by gold, and other currencies would peg to it. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund, IMF, were born to prevent future collapses and ensure post-war economic cooperation. World War II didn't just end with military victory. It ended with a financial architecture that still shapes the world today. When World War II ended, a new war began, not with bullets, but with budgets. The Cold War was as much a financial battle as a military one. The United States and the Soviet Union didn't just fight for land or ideology. They fought over which system would rule the global economy, capitalism or communism. And money was the weapon of choice. With Bretton Woods in place, the US dollar became the anchor of global finance. But America didn't just hoard gold, it used the dollar to project power. It funded allies, rebuilt Europe through the Marshall Plan, and tied nations into a financial web backed by its booming post-war economy. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union built its own system, centralized, planned, and sealed off from Western markets. But the ruble never gained global trust. Without open markets or convertible currency, it couldn't compete. As the arms race escalated, the financial strain on both superpowers deepened, but only one could keep printing. The United States ran deficits and printed dollars, yet the world still demanded them. Why? Because America controlled the institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, and later, the Petrodollar system. The dollar wasn't just a currency, it was a passport into the global economy. In this era, the battlefield was global, but the front line was economic. And the US dollar became the ultimate weapon of influence. By the 1970s, war had changed again. Troops and tanks still mattered, but now, the most powerful force on earth was oil. And whoever controlled it, controlled everything. In 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard, cutting the final link between the dollar and any real asset. It was a bold move, and a dangerous one. Without gold backing, trust in the dollar could have collapsed. But something else happened instead. The US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia, sell oil only in US dollars. In return, America would provide military protection. Other OPEC nations followed. The petrodollar system was born. Suddenly, every country on earth needed dollars, not because of gold, but because they needed oil. And just like that, the dollar stayed supreme. But this wasn't just economic strategy. It was geopolitical warfare. From Iran to Angola, wars were waged not for ideology, but for control of energy. Nations that tried to sell oil in other currencies, Iraq, Libya, often found themselves isolated or invaded. Oil was no longer just fuel. It was financial leverage. And in this new era, wars weren't just about land. They were about who gets to define the value of money itself.